Hello and welcome to Bondcember Day 6. Today we are looking at the 1965 film Thunderball,
Dun, 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 dun.
in which Bond goes to the Bahamas to find some nuclear missiles. And long underwater sequences occur.
Long underwater sequences.
Underwater.
I told you like one time I fell asleep while watching this movie because they just had a Bond marathon. It was like 2 in the morning and it was like, whatever. I woke up 4 times during the movie, and it felt like I woke up at the same 4 times because there are just so many underwater sequences and they go on for so long.
Too many. It's too many. I would say, what is it? Basically, the last quarter of this film is one long, prolonged sequence in which Bond is on a boat or in the water, or there's sort of various forces sort of facing up against that. So the main concept of this: Bond goes to the Bahamas in search of Spectre's number 2, Emil Largo, played by Adolfo. I think it's Adolfo Cieli, isn't it?
Yeah, that's probably right. I say Adolfo Celli, but I am probably way off. My French and my Italian are very bad.
Yeah, so he's basically, I think this is number 2 has been sort of a recurring character through sort of the last few films. You know, you've seen him sort of come up, but this is his film, and he is sort of where, and this is where Bond sort of, you know, the Austin Powers sort of element of Bond starts to come in, because you obviously get number 2 in the Austin Powers film is fairly heavily based upon Largo. And Thunderball is sort of an interesting one because it's sort of, first off, Thunderball will then go on, as we will discuss, to be remade. This is like,
yeah,
this is one of the ones.
Producer Kevin McClory had the rights. We'll find this when we talk about Casino Royale, but Ian Fleming needed the money, so he sold off the rights to some of his novels for very cheaply. He sold Casino Royale, I think, for like £600, and then it got transferred to a bunch of people. First to the people who eventually made the CBS, and then somebody died, and then it fell to who made the '67 Casino Royale. But for this one, Kevin McClory had an option, so it was him, and he had a lot of rights things. Like he said, he had a verbal handshake agreement with Ian Fleming that he had the rights to just this movie. This was his.
Yeah.
So this is why he is the producer and not Cubby Broccoli and
Saltzman. No, absolutely.
Saltzman, yeah.
And this was, I believe, this was meant to be the first one, but the legal wrangling took so long that this was going to, this is how Bond was going to be started. Which I suppose is sort of like, how would you have done this on like £1 million?
Yeah, it's as we've said before back in Goldfinger, Thunderball was more expensive than the previous 3 movies combined.
Yeah,
and it is on the screen. I mean, this was very clearly groundbreaking, you know, big stuff for the 1960s. And it's kind of one of the first things where you see in Bond films where they're kind of reacting to... Well, I don't know if they're exactly reacting, but this was when, Jacques Cousteau was starting to get big. And... there was a lot of things about underwater, so, they kind of followed that. And also, it's just like there was breakthrough technology and, like, filming underwater, so it's like they wanted to use it, and use it they did.
Yeah, but what is particularly interesting is sort of, I feel this is the moment at which sort of Bond sort of goes off into its own sort of reality. I mean, the first 3 films are fairly grounded, like in all fairness, and Thunderball starts with Bond with a rocket back.
Yeah, the intro is kind of its own, bag of, if you think about this too much, it's going to make your brain hurt, because it's just like, okay, did he have the rocket pack set there? And I guess he probably did, because they were probably waiting for him. But it's like, that's not a thing you can just put on in 5 seconds and then just take off with.
It's got to be idling there for quite some time.
Yeah, and I think they had the only guy in the world who could operate it using it for the, wide stuntman shots. And
because it worked, because it actually worked. This is a working piece of kit, which is interesting, because then they get the rebreathers, and I think somebody said basically they went up to the UK's sort of Royal Corps of Engineer and just go, does this work? Can this actually work? And it's like, okay.
And I mean, some people have asked about the appeal of the Bond movies, like, I mean, outside the political stuff, because, obviously they're sexist, racist, colonialist. There are a lot of things we can bring up, and they're all perfectly valid. But these are, like, where they break out the biggest, this is where it starts to break out the biggest toys, the best technology, and it's just like they get the best people in the world to get together and, knock off an action movie. And, like, in the 2000s Casino Royale, like, they actually got the founder of parkour to be one of the villains. So, I mean, they get that quality of people, and they get, like, only the people who can do this. So, it's kind of like, I guess John Wick is kind of replacing it, because it's, it's a bunch of stuntmen who wanted to make a stuntman movie with, like, the best people in the world. And, it doesn't have some of the baggage that Bond does.
Yeah, but, no, I would agree. It does feel like a post Bond almost, and I suppose you can say, as we'll come on to when we talk about the more recent Bonds, obviously you start to get competition from other sort of secret agent type films.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is there are elements of this film which are great, like some of the stuff with the actual, the conspiracy. Okay, what is Largo actually after, and this has certainly got one of the better Bond sort of girls, because it's got Domino, who's very much sort of, up to this point Bond girls have been very passive, very sort of,
Yeah.
Yeah,
like
and
the ones who are really active show up, like, much later in the film. Like Honor Blackman as Pussy Galore. I mean, she shows up like 2/3 of the way in, but that's not too late. But Honey Ryder from Dr. No, she shows up 3/4 of the way, and even though she's fairly, does well with her part, and it's a decent part, it feels like she's barely in the movie and she barely does anything.
Yeah, whereas Domino is pretty much in this from like quarter of the way through. I don't think she appears fairly early on, but the whole conspiracy behind this sort of goes, okay, up to this point in the Bond series we have had, Spectre have been there, but Spectre have been like, okay, you go off and do this thing. And sort of, and Thunderball is like, okay, no, each of these guys, each of these sort of, numbered agents or Spectre are fairly important, fairly heavy-hitting guys on their own. And certainly Largo is one of the more interesting sort of ones of the Bond sort of series.
Yeah. It's like the radio spot for it I sent you. It was like, here comes the biggest Bond of them all, and they're not lying, and some people actually prefer this to Goldfinger. I don't, but like this is like, if you think Goldfinger is overrated, I find they generally sink to this one. I don't know if it just fits more to their likes or what. I have a few problems with it. It's the first thing is, I am from a landlocked state, Nebraska. I do not care about the ocean. I mean, it's cool. There's like, it's nice that there's like water that is completely see-through and all these tropical fish, but it's just like, it's the ocean. It's a big thing of water. I'm not super interested in it. So, and
and
I would harp. Oh, I would harp on it more, but it feels like I'll just leave it with the Mystery Science Theater 3000 quote from Devilfish. Underwater fight sequences are the drum solos of movies, and that there are few better lines ever written that so aptly describe it.
It is, and
Because
it's that entire last third of the film is just it goes on and on, and we're underwater, and Bond's stuck on an island, and it goes on, and it is.
Yeah.
It's just. Don't get me wrong. It's like it. Some of it is very well shot. Some of it is obviously, you can clearly tell there is care and attention taken in the shot in like the whole underwater sequences. But they like this. This is I feel where Bond becomes a little bit bloated, because this is like, this it goes from a fairly sprightly 2 hours to 2 hours 10, and I feel like this is the thing. Bond's films start to get longer from this period, from this point onwards.
Yeah, for a little bit. Like, You Only Live Twice isn't that long. It kind of just goes at a more relaxed pace, I find. But Thunderball and You Only Live Twice, I find, are movies I really have to be in the mood for. And I am way more in the mood for You Only Live Twice than I am for Thunderball. But that's not to say it doesn't have its moments, it doesn't have its accomplishments, it's just not one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's not a bad film, and it's certainly not a bad Bond film compared to some of the other ones, but it's just... It feels like this film is trying to do, more without really, having any idea what to do with more other than, scale.
Yeah, it's the same but bigger, and it's where the series starts to like be more open to parody, which is why there was the first big Bond parody, which somehow was more expensive than Thunderball, but we'll get to that in time. But
yeah.
And then I'm watching it again, and it's just like the plot has too many characters, and they're going through too much. And I know Bond movies are things you do not think about the plot too much, because if you do, it'll drive you a little bit batty. Especially when you get to Diamonds Are Forever and you're trying to follow exactly who's doing what when, and it's this long domino effect of things that lead up to the giant master plan.
Yeah.
But you start with the Count, or Jacques Beauvais, who disguises himself as a woman and fakes his death, and then Bond finds him and kills him. So after getting hit with a poker, he goes to a resort which somehow has Count Lippy, who is also Inspector and also a part of the plan. And it's like, but I thought Bond was at the resort because he was recovering because he'd gotten injured with a poker in the fight, or did they... I don't know if there was a line of dialogue I missed.
Yeah, and this is the first 15 minutes of the film. It's like, by that point, it's like you have two characters. Like, you have a guy who disguises as a guy, but also the guy who's disguising himself as is also in the resort.
Yeah, and then you have the guy who is performing the plastic surgery on the guy who is getting who is going to replace the pilot.
And of course, Bond is womanizing.
Then you have the pilot who has the bad woman in Fiona, I believe, and the bad redhead, and then we have the good redhead, and then there's the doctor who is looking after the nuclear weapons, and then you have Largo, and then you have Vargas, who does not love and doesn't like women, and it's like, what do you do, Vargas? Well, he doesn't even do very much in the context of the movie. He is just kind of Emilio Largo's guy who's there.
Yeah, he's the big heavy. He's the big heavy guy who just you're a Bond villain. You are ascribed. You're a clever person who does all the sort of technical stuff and then gets axed by you because you have dispensed with his skills. And you have the big heavy guy who you also are sort of assigned with when you join Spectre, who just stands there and looks menacing and may have something interesting to do before Bond inevitably defeats them. There is a pattern now.
Yeah, but it's just like too many characters, and it's just going around this plot that is a little too convenient. Like, Bond seems to fall conveniently wherever, the right spot of the plot gets him. I mean, some of it is detective work, like when he sees I saw this guy at this resort I was. This looks like a thing we need to investigate. And that's how he gets the into where Largo's hiding out and where everything is. And then this is kind of where the movie drags. Like, we're trying to figure out, but Bond, the Connery Bond has his own specific way of doing things. It is easily made fun of that James Bond introduces himself to people and, he makes it obvious that he is the guy who is investigating them. But that is Sean Connery's aggro style. As I, watching all of these back to back, he is super aggro. He is aggressive. He wants to know people he's after. So they play their hand. And when they play their hand, they, unleash some vulnerability. And normally he can get out of it. Sometimes the writers have to get him out of it, but that's for a later film. But that is just Sean Connery's style. As we will find out, in On Her Majesty's Secret Service, there's a different approach that Lazenby does. But this is just Sean Connery's personal style. Is he, even though he is in disguise and he is a spy, he is, super aggressive, super goes after them. Like, he goes right at the Baccarat and, hey, I know who you are. I'm the one looking for you. And he is very annoying about it.
Yeah, but it's like, and this is the thing, he sort of very much is, I'm James Bond. It's like, well, what are you going to do, villain? He's just identified himself, but now if you kill him, it's like really obvious that you know who he is, and it's like, it's like, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's
I mean, it's easy to make fun of because he's not really being a spy, but it's a certain attitude, and there was a weird article on Roger Ebert's review for Quantum of Solitude where it says James Bond isn't an action hero, he's an attitude, and it's kind of rambly, and I don't get the entire, but I get the, it's an attitude. He is still kind of an action hero. I mean, he's definitely an action hero, but there is like a certain attitude that other people will approach differently. So it's that part I'm more or less fine with because he is poking at them to get them to make a mistake, and they inevitably do, or they are overconfident in themselves.
Yeah, it's this very British. It's a very British sort of sensibility, and particularly sort of like it is still the very much the polite private school boy of sort of going way. Even though this is like a guy who goes around essentially killing people, it's like, hello, I'm going to introduce myself. I'm going to sort of, because this is the way that, English gentlemen, even in sort of, something as clearly, violent and dangerous as spying, this is how they carry themselves. And it's sort of interesting to sort of view Bond almost as sort of that, sort of the evolution, because these are obviously films made in Britain by British people. The evolution of sort of the whole attitude and the way that Bond sort of reflects sort of colonialism, post-colonial Britain. Mm-hmm.
And they, try to fix things, but it's just like, it's trying to fix the system within the system that doesn't always work. But, let's see here. We're kind of running out of time for what we want to. We didn't really address the second hour, which is kind of it's a lot of swimming in the water, and it's a lot of, here's the good Bond girl, and Bond's trying to get her to, lean on Largo and get some information. Then there's Fiona, who is, very obviously the villainous girl who, don't give a fuck, which is, she's nice in her own way because she, she's the first, Bond villain girl besides, arguably Rosa Klebb, who,
Yeah, we've
gets to be
discussed it in
bad,
previous.
and it's just unapologetically bad, and she's fun, but there's just a lot of long scenes that just kind of blend into each other. Eventually, there's a chase through a festival, which becomes its own action movie cliche, and there is a tense chase where Bond's trying to escape these people with guns, and he goes through a festival, but the only problem is it gets done better in On Her Majesty's Secret Service, so that kind of makes it less in retrospect.
Yeah.
And
there are sharks, the pool of sharks, because hey, that's where because every Bond villain seems to now have not only your token clever henchman, your token big strong henchman, you get a pet. Here you go, you can have some sharks.
Yeah, he does have sharks, and they are shot very well. And Sean Connery's reaction to them is real because the plexiglass protection could only go so high in the pools they had. And so the sharks would just swim over it, and then they would swim right over Sean Connery, and Sean Connery has that oh shit look on his face. And it's a real oh shit look because that shark is right fucking there. But it's the movie eventually becomes exhausting. It's just too long, and there's too much of the same scenes. On Her Majesty's Secret Service is an equally long movie, but it also has so much more variety in its action sequences, and it feels like it moves better, and it all of its. I mean, you kind of get tired of water, but you don't really get tired of the mountains, and plus they do. Yeah. It sets itself up to do more with it. So, I mean, Thunderball, it's fine. It's probably one of my lesser Sean Connery movies, although it's I'm borderline with it. It's it's all right. It's fine. It's the kind of fine where it's just it's non-committal about how much you like it.
It's not bad. It's not good. It's just sort of there, and it's very wet. It's this very, very aquatic movie, and it's when the aquatic scenes are shot nicely, it's great. When it's not, it is here is some stuff going on underwater, and it's sort of the whole film, half the film is underwater, and it's when the underwater stuff is shot brilliantly. It's James Cameron's the Abyss. The Abyss. It's you could clearly see it's look at us, we can now do underwater photography really well and sort of overuse it.
Yeah. And I've seen The Abyss twice. I don't remember anything about it. No. So, but that's Thunderball. It's it has impressive parts. I don't think the impressive parts, come together. And one last thing before we go, the Tom Jones theme, which I am convinced is totally an anime theme because it is absolutely complete nonsense. And Tom Jones said as much in interviews. I have no idea I just came in, I sung this song as hard as I could, and then I left, and I have no idea what Thunderball is. I have no what this song is about. But he sung it hard. He sung that last note so hard he almost passed out. So it's the key to any great anime song is singing with utmost conviction, complete nonsense that means nothing.
And if it don't get Tom,
redundant, but
and if it don't get Tom Jones.
Anyway, I'm Joe.
I'm Tom, and next time we have how do we introduce this? How do we introduce this thing for tomorrow?
Casino Royale, which for a great long while was the worst movie I had ever seen in my life. It was the one that took the spot. And I told you this beforehand, and then you watched it. Tell me, as a preview, was I wrong?
No.
Okay. We'll
see you
tomorrow,
folks.